You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Oh, great to be back today. And today, I want to talk about what's happening. I want to talk about what's going on, and I know that you know what I'm talking about because there are a lot of things that are happening right now. I know that a lot of people have the fear of the unknown, worried as to what's going to happen next, where are we, what's the trajectory of our world. You know, it's a very interesting culmination, really, of events right now, and I think that you would have to agree with me. I mean, how often... I understand that Halloween happens once a year, and I understand that we time change, and I understand that's happening right now. But we also have an election, right? We have an election, and a lot of people are really fearful of what's going to happen, wondering what the results are going to be. What happens when we get the results, and how is that all going to come to pass? And it's interesting because with all of that fear, all of that worry, I don't know about you, but I have people telling me all the time, well, I'm going to go to the grocery store and I'm going to buy all this stuff and I'm going to get this and I'm going to get that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And some people are talking about how they're going out of town during the election. They're going to avoid the big cities. But what do we do? What do we do as a human that has a right to live our own life, a right to have our life and our freedoms and our happiness, and a right to be able to focus on what we want to focus on? You know, how do we focus on us? How do we refocus throughout this entire situation? How do we refocus on us? Okay, and that is a question. That's the question that I want to ask today, because this can be very challenging and very difficult for us to focus on because we don't really know which direction to look. Which direction do we go? How do we focus our energy into something that we can actually, take care of? How do we refocus our energy and time and purpose and perspective and all that great stuff to something that we actually have some control over? And I know that some of you will say, well, control is just an illusion, and to some degree it is. I'll give you that. I mean, we all hurling through space on a round rock, and I get it. Control is basically an illusion. But there are some things that we can control more than we can control of other things. And so in today's show, I want to talk about that. How do we see this? How do we focus? How do we stop feeling overwhelmed? How do we stop feeling overwhelmed? How do we stop feeling so small? I mean, not to mention the fact that we're still dealing with the COVID situation, and now the numbers are at record numbers, and we're hearing that other countries are closing back up. Well, I'm sure that if it happens here, there's going to be a civil war, but we won't go there today. But again, that's another fear factor, right? What happens? What happens next? And how can the economy survive? Which it can't if we do that again. And so all of us are in fear. We're in fear of what's going to happen, who's going to take over the White House. But what about the big focus? What about the big play? And I find that the more that I get conditioned to believe that I need to focusing on everything else is the more I deceive myself as to my truth. And I have fallen prey to this multiple times. And I understand that there's a lot of things that are happening that needs to be exposed, but I don't know if I'm necessarily the one that needs to expose it. And I feel that there's a lot of things as well that we get focused on, that we get overwhelmed by. And in that focus and being overwhelmed by, we have a tendency of not being able to figure out how to focus on our work, how to focus on our family, how to focus on our own health and wellness. I mean, many of us aren't taking care of ourselves. We're barely getting by. We're unable to focus on our happiness and our purpose and our mission. And so I want to begin the concept and the conversation today with really talking about being aware of what, or trying to figure out what our mission is. And I know that many of you out there say, I've been trying to figure that out for a long time. Okay, and I get it. I understand that, because trying to figure out our mission, and I think a lot of times, a mission to me has indications of purpose. I don't know if it's, I think the mission is kind of like everything that goes on, multiple missions. It's almost like, when they take a mission to space, right? They're not talking about the entire space exploration. We're talking about the fact that we're going on this particular mission. And so I'm not literally, dividing and kind of cutting into pieces the purpose, and that's what mission is. So I don't want to talk about purpose completely right now. I want to talk about mission. So how do we refocus on the mission? How do we refocus our energy on, okay, hey, this is the next thing that I need to do. This is the next step that I want to do. This is the next thing that I want to create. How do I refocus that? And the first thing that I've realized is that I actually have to get right with myself what's important. Because sometimes we lose sight of what's important. Like what's really important. And I agree with you. All this unrest, all this stuff it scares us. It's worrisome. What's going to happen? Who's going to get hurt? Innocent people are going to get hurt. What's going to happen next? What's the next step? But I realize that the more and more that I fixate on that, the more that I lose my way in my mission. And I feel that the mission has to be dealt with in a way that is not based in fear or reaction. Okay, and so that's the thing that I think that a lot of us are realizing right now, is that many of us are seeing things in a fear-based reality. A fear-based reality. And the problem is that we're reacting to outside sources of knowledge, information, what have you, situations, possible situations, unpossible situations. And in those situations, what do? We kind of downgrade ourselves. And I know it's hard. This is like one of the noisiest times to be on this planet. I mean, don't you think it's one of the noisiest times to be on this planet? I mean, it's like, for the love of God, I just want some quiet and peace. I mean, it just keeps getting noisier and noisier, and all of a sudden the noise is at such a crescendo that I think that many of us are overwhelmed by the concept of this noise, as to also the value of the noise. How much of the noise is believable? How much isn't? How much is very real? How much is very real but doesn't help us in any way, shape, and form? It's funny. It's like, I feel like literally all over the world, it's like almost like there's a party 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's not always a happy party, and it's going on at full speed and at the highest decimal possible. Not to mention all the news, the newscasts, not to mention all the online news, online podcasts, all the social medias. And that's the thing. And it's like, you get to the point where it's like, and then you also have the impact of how every country sees other countries. And we have all these impacts. And then we have how everybody regurgitates the information. Then we have how some information is changed and maybe it is real or it's not real. So again, how do we go back to our mission? Because only in our mission can we actually take the time and energy and to actually be counted. I recently voted, and I know that many of you out there have voted, and I know that there's a lot bigger turnout. But to me, it's like, okay, yeah, okay, I got to vote. I'm one of the billion. Great. But I feel that my vote, as far as my personal vote on my personal life, counts way more. I'm not going to look back in 20 years and be like, wow, I voted. I got my pen and I got my stylus and I voted. One little beef though, and I'm going to say this. One beef that I had the other day, I was voting. And I walk outside of the voter place and I walk out and all these people had thrown their stylus on the ground. It's like, what have we become? It's like ever since this whole COVID thing, like the environment took a backseat big time, right? Everybody's getting their to-go food. I've never seen more plasticware in my life. I mean, we're talking about straws for a year. Give me a break. It's all about pomp and circumstance, right? So, but I remember I walked outside and there must have been 150 stylists on the ground. And it's just like, who does that? Who throws their mask and gloves on the ground? And, it's interesting. Every single day for the last I don't know how many days, every single day, once a day, I will get to a parking lot and I will pull into a spot where somebody has taken all of their trash out of their car and stuck it on the ground. Bags of Whataburger and Burger King and bottles of water and anything else they can find to throw on the ground, they just trash it out. And it's like we're kind of at the point where it's like a lot of people aren't thinking about anything but themselves. And we're being surrounded by, what I'd like to call is a derelict attitude in life. I mean, how did you get trained to do that? And I know that many of you listening to the show here, if you're listening on KBDT or you're listening around the country on USA Radio Networks or GCN, you know that that probably appalls you. And so, I have missions in life with purpose, with helping people to understand who they are and helping them find their true identity. But at the same time, I have other purposes too. I have other missions. And I'm sure you have other missions too. You might have one specific mission that's really big in your heart, but there's little small specific, missions that guide you. And one of my missions is, hey, it's, the things that really matter the most are the things that we don't really hear about. Water, the state of the planet. I'm going to say water again. All these things we don't hear about, which is really sad. And I guess it's so concerning because there is no answer. And so they just decide to just take it off the news because they know that there's no real way of discussing the big issues, because really all this other stuff would just pale in comparison because there's not a lot of time. And I think that the fact is that most of us are getting kind of stuck in these shiny objects of these people that are telling us something, but we're not being able to focus on our mission. So I'm asking you today, in today's show, besides your big purpose, and we'll talk about the big kahuna, we'll talk about the big purpose here later on, we'll talk about the enchilada, we'll talk about the meal deal. Yeah, that's what it is. The purpose is the meal deal, right? You get your sides, you get a medium iced tea, maybe you like your sweetened, maybe you don't, I don't know. If you're not from Texas, you probably don't like sweet tea. I don't like sweet tea either, but I like tea. I'm a big tea drinker. I'm okay with that. Prefer coffee, pretty much. But okay, I'll stop going down that rabbit hole. But think about it. What is your small mission that actually connects with your big kahuna of your purpose? And how can we carry that through? And you know what that does for us is it allows us to feel our own personal power. Okay? Because what I've seen is that the longer we go down this road, this deranged road, the more that we actually lose our sense of power. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, yeah, you're just one in the masses. And I'm not saying that, we got to have all this power. But I'm saying, it is nice to feel powerful. And we can be powerful, but we have to figure out how to derive that power and where that power is derived from. Very interesting stuff. But it can be derived from a mission that's like an excerpt or something that comes from the other side of what's happening. Okay, so let's go back to this real quick. All this stuff is happening on the news, and I know that you'd have to live under a rock to not be feeling the stress level. Okay? But how do we transmute a piece of that to help ourselves, to help the people in the world, to do what we need to do, and to functionally feel purpose-driven and powerful in the same thought? And that's what I want to ask you, and I want you to ask you. Because there's something that all of us can do in tandem to what we're already doing that not only expresses our heart and our belief system and what we think is important, but it also expresses ourselves. Stay tuned. I'm going to be talking more about this, more about how to just quiet the noise, okay? As well as Dan Nelson's going to be here later on in our continuation story of the kidnapping story, which is going to be very interesting too. We got to have a little drama in the show, right? A little more drama. So stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives. With me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Glad to be back here live on the show. We were talking about fear of the unknown, fear of what's happening, the culmination of events, everything that's happening right now. Okay, we have the election, we have Halloween, we have time change, we have this whole situation happening in front of our very eyes. And at the same time, a lot of us are worried, a lot of us are stressed, a lot of us are scared, but we don't know what to do. And right before the break, I was talking about mission, purpose, having that mission, being on purpose, being on point, and how to figure out what our mission is. Because I think some of us we get sidetracked. All of us get sidetracked. It's like the noisiest time to be alive. I don't know about you, but it is so noisy. And there's so many things going on. And it's challenging because you're sitting there saying, you know what? I want to do this. I got to do that. What about this? What's going to happen here? What's going to happen there? What are we going to do then? What'll happen if that happens? What happens if that happens? What about that? What if that happens? And so we get stuck. We get stuck wondering what we're going to do next. And in that position, we don't feel very confident. We don't feel very confident. We feel stressed out. We feel worried. We feel scared. So what do we do with our mission? How do we find our mission? How do we create this mission? Every mission is going to be different for all of us. Every mission is going to be different for all of us. And, the thing is that with the mission itself, we have to just figure out what the mission is. When I was talking earlier before the break, and I said, one of the things that's really upset me ever since this whole COVID thing took place is that the whole environmental thing just kind of went it just kind of went to the wayside. Like, remember everybody was talking about the straws and how bad the straws were, and we're not going to use straws anymore. No more straws, even though you get a big gulp, big plastic cup with a big plastic top, but we're not going to use any straws anymore. Yeah, I mean, it's like, what? I mean, what's that about? I mean, you have a ton of plastic over there, but we got to eliminate that straw. That's the real problem. It's kind of like it's the red herring. It's what we deal with in our entire society. Everything is like, look over here at the shiny object, but don't look behind it. Look over here, but don't look over there. And it's like, this has been one of my big beefs is that, when I was leaving the election, when I was voting on the election yesterday, early voting, yes, I did it. Last 30 minutes of early voting, I pulled it off. But I walked outside and all these stylists were on the ground. Like, people just throwing their stylus, like they don't care. And so that's part of my mission is to basically, remind people of the environmental impact that we have. If I see another freaking set of gloves or mask in the parking lot at the grocery store thrown on the ground, I think I'm going to puke. It's like, who gets off on this? It's like, were you taught that? Oh, hey, just throw your crap out on the ground and it's going to be okay because somebody else will be there to pick it up. And so what is your mission? And I know some of y'all have been watching on Facebook, and we had a little bit of a snafu. Sometimes Facebook gives us snafu. So if you are, please return back into the new video feed. But, it's interesting because I think many of you were thinking about, hey, what is my mission? What am I here to share? And mission, like I was saying earlier, is kind of like, like a space mission program, right? You have the mission program that's like, it's a piece of it. It's not like we're not looking at everything. We're not going to every single planet. We're not going outside of the Milky Way. We're just going to check out one thing. So what is that one thing that we want to do? What is that one thing that you can do to bring power back into your life, to actually instill a powerful thought process in other people's lives, and to really give back to some degree in a way that really connects with you? This is the question. So returning, I'm going to give some options and opportunities on how we can do that, how you can find that, how you can sense that, how you can figure that all out. Also, Dan Nelson will be joining us here in just a bit with his continuation story of kidnapping money, and the list goes on. It'll be fun, a little bit of drama, right? That's exactly what we need, drama. But we got a lot of noise, but we're going to have some fun, and you're going to love Dan's story as well. So stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives. We'll be back in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Look at second. What do you look at 258th? I mean, it's like, at what point in time do we just go, I've had enough. I've had enough. It's just so much. It literally is media overkill constantly, all the time. And my question to you is, how are you refocusing your mission? How are you creating a way to be powerful? And how are you focusing on that in a daily basis? And I've been before where I have literally watched media after media after media after media, getting stressed out, worried, seeing some of the writing on the wall, being aware of that, okay? Understanding and looking at things in a legitimate way, not reacting emotionally, but looking at how things have been propose or put out there. And understanding that in general, a lot of this stuff, well, we can't change. There's certain things we can do, but there's other things we can't. So how do we create power in our life when we feel bombarded by all these things happening? How do we create that power? And the first thing that I want to iterate in today's discussion is the fact that we need to do something that matters to us. So obviously we have, responsibilities and things that we want to do. We also have the things that we're doing in our own life. We have all these things happening, right? We have responsibilities. We have the things that we have to do on a daily basis, right? And that's great. But we also have things that we're working for toward our purpose. But I think the purpose is kind of that bigger enchilada, but I think that there can be some different little things that kind of streamline from that purpose that might directly relate to what's happening now. So, because we can't put our head in the sand. Isn't that true? I'm not one of those people that's going to come on the radio and tell you that you should just refocus and you just need to say affirmations all the time and your life's going to be so much better. No, I'm not going to BS you. That is not what I'm saying. What I am saying is this, is that we can't overcome it. We can't let it go. I mean, yes, we could move to an island that didn't have any TVs or internet, I guess. I don't really know how legitimate that and logistic that's going to be, being that fact that most of us need to work. But there's a way of taking the information we get, limiting how much intake we have. Because I don't want to hear all of it. I'm tired. I'm hearing so much of it. It's so much. And I'm happy about that I'm hearing it. But at the same time, being able to decipher and figure out what's what is tough. But how do I take what I'm hearing and actually use this in a positive way? Is it enlightening other people? Is it connecting? See, one of the things that I do best is I help people reconnect with why they're here on this planet. Okay, and so there might be something that you can do from the situation that's happening that'll actually give you power in your life that'll keep you from putting your head in the sand, right? But it'll also allow you to have power in your life of the situations that's happening outside of you. But we have to remember not to lose sight of our mission. And so this has to be like a side mission, I would say, a side mission, because I think that many of you are looking for this side mission. Some people call it a side hustle. We're talking about a side mission, right? The side mission would be like, what can we do to better our society? What can we do to do something that makes us feel good and does it based on our value system? And I know that some of you have committed to being online and discussing it, or maybe a podcast or a show. Some of you try to educate the people that you work with, and maybe there's other different levels, but, what is it that you can do? And how does that orchestrate and connect with you at your core? And that's what I think is valuable, is that we want to do something at our core. We want to do something that connects with our reality. We want to do something that connects with our personality. We want to do something that connects with our strengths. Think about it. What are your strengths? All of us have strengths. I don't know about weaknesses. I mean, I do think that we all have things that aren't necessarily our strengths. Would I call it a weakness? No. Would I just say, hey, there's certain things that we probably need to let somebody else handle? And I know that a lot of us work, long hours, and we have a lot of parts of our work that we're not really loving, but we do it anyway because we don't pay anybody else to do it, or can't afford it, or don't want to afford it to pay everybody else to do it, so we do it ourselves. So there's a lot of things that we have to pick up the slack with. But that's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a mission. It's not about picking up the slack, and maybe it is to some degree. Somebody else isn't doing anything. You see a ability there, but it's got to be something that you actually like to do. It has to be something that you're called to do. A calling, like something that makes you feel good about yourself, something that connects with your highest good. What is that? And this is only for you to answer. I can't answer this question for you. I can just put out some of the information. I can kind of just echo the knowledge, but I can't solve it for you. I can't create that. I can't tell you, yeah, this is what you should be doing. No, it's more like, okay, so what is it that you love? What is it that you're seeing that's not being taken care of? What is it that you're seeing that's falling by the wayside? So I give you this example of, walking out of the polls last night, and there's all these stylists, like, that you have to use. They want you to use a stylus because of COVID. They want you to use the stylus instead of your finger when you're voting, which is, to me, it's crazy, but it is what it is. It's just another thing to go into the landfill, right? I mean, who cares about Mother Earth after we had COVID? I mean, now that's taken over. It's crazy. It's just like, well, I guess that was yesterday's news. That happens every day here. And so it's like, that was a mission that I found. It's like, we've got to get back into remembering what's important. And how would I do that? How do we take that over? How do we make that happen? Even that small of a thing, how do you get the word out? How do you change things? And this is up to you to think about, because everybody has something that they bring to the table that nobody else has. A quality, an ability, a talent that other people look at you and go, wow, I mean, that's amazing stuff. I wish I had that. And it's interesting. And it's like, if you could harness that in a mission, in conjunction with your purpose. And then that's another question, is what is your purpose on this planet? Have you thought about it? Some of the things that make you the most upset or angry might be part of the purpose, right? But you got to get real with that, because it can't just be reaction, because that can be quickly fleeting. It's got to be something that really connects at the highest level. Right now, it's time to talk a little bit about history, I think. It's time to talk with Dan Nelson. Now it's time for our resident historian, Dan Nelson. And last week, if you've been listening to the show, you know that we kind of cliffhanged in a situation where we had a child who was kidnapped, and we had the mastermind behind the kidnapping, who was the father of the child, George Stag. Dan, okay, so I've been waiting for this cliffhanger to be figured out. What happens to the guy? What happens next?
All right, well, the deal was that we left off with was the actual kidnapper, this Betty Brainerd. They decided that she was acting more impulsively, and she was sort of taken in by this George T. Stag, and she really wasn't, the culprit, or as you put it, the mastermind that he was. So they said, look, we'll let her go if you return with the child. And I guess he figured, okay, well, this is starting to get old. Being in Canada with a 22-month-old baby, there's very few guys that have the skills to manage that. If you're a great father of a 22-month-old baby and taking care of it by yourself, then no offense intended, but I know it could be a challenge. So anyways, George Thomas Stag turns himself in, and he was a relatively famous newspaper reporter at that time. He was called an adventure reporter. That was actually how he was listed in the census, which there weren't too many people that made a living as an adventure reporter back in the 1920s. And it's because he came from money, and he had the opportunity to have a career that was maybe not quite as demanding as some others when you come from a wealthy line. And we'll talk more about his line in a future episode. But anyways, what they ended up, the deal they cut with George was they wanted to send him 15 years to life for the kidnapping, and finally working back and forth with the judge, and then he got sentenced. And then he asked for a pardon. And really this went back and forth because you had attorneys in Washington State that felt she should pay a bigger price. You had attorneys in New York State that felt he should pay a bigger price. And so there was a lot of this cross-country negotiation between these different district attorneys, law enforcement groups trying to, feel that justice was served in this case, and not too much of a sweetheart deal was set for either of the people involved. So anyways, finally they said, no, you need to go to prison. And they actually said, we're going to have you get assigned a job in prison. So he was assigned to be a chaplain, which I'm not really sure how adventure reporter set you up to be chosen as chaplain. But and I haven't come across anything saying he was a man of God or almost a priest or anything like that. But anyways, he got assigned as a chaplain, which, it's probably better than being a janitor in terms of what you got to do. And then he's serving his time in prison, and then he wanted to get pardoned. And so he was struggling with the governor of Washington to get a pardon. And then the governor actually left the state. And apparently the laws in Washington State at the time is when the governor left, and keep in mind it wasn't like today where you could leave and fly cross country and be back by evening. the lieutenant governor became the governor and had the power to do things like pardons. So he managed to arrange a phone call with the lieutenant governor, and the lieutenant governor pardoned him on the condition that he not make contact with his son until he was 21 years of age. So Stag had probably had enough of prison at that point that he agreed to those conditions and got out. And by then his son was living in San Diego, so it wasn't like they were going to run into each other on the street. And he was bound by those conditions, and he honored them. So he never had to go back to prison. I couldn't find a whole lot about him during the interim, during the next 19 years while his son was growing up. I couldn't find much about George Stag, so he probably just lived off the money from his family. I don't know if being a kidnapper affects your ability to get a job as an adventure reporter, where you put that exactly on your resume. But when his son turned 21, he reached out and contacted him, and that was the first time that Bobby Stag knew his dad was not Marion Lehman, the newspaper reporter that married his mom and basically raised Bobby, gave him his last name. And so suddenly he found out, he had different parents. Maybe he found out at that point in time that he came from a wealthy line. There may have been monies that came to him because they were pretty financially successful, these Stag people. And like I said, we'll talk about the Stag family and where they got their money from in another episode.
I look forward to that. Wow, it's just information. You wonder how the child, though, responded to the fact that, he's just now finding out that, his dad's not his dad is not his biological dad.
Maybe that's what drove him to have an affair with his secretary. You never know.
Really?
I don't know. I'm playing armchair therapist. You're supposed to figure that stuff out. But, he didn't have a lot of stable relationships. He was married a couple times to actresses that in the day may have been noteworthy. They had parts in different television shows and movies and commercials and things. So maybe that played into his unstable relationship type of deal. It is interesting that you end up in Hollywood, which is sort of the most surreal place. And of course, it was just starting to boom then. I mean, it was radio and motion picture before it was television, and that you end up earning a living sort of in that world. But it's hard to know how that all played out because, of course, my client didn't know his father, so you can't really say. What did your dad ever say about that, or what do you think about it? Now, he had a son, a natural son, a legitimate son, who's a half-brother, and he actually lives down in Mexico. And he participated in the DNA test just so we could sort of flesh this out. Yeah, they gave up all their American life, moved down to Mexico, and living cheap.
Wow.
Yeah, sort of different.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so I could tell you a whole story about getting a DNA test into Mexico and out of Mexico because basically the customs authorities looked at DNA tests as very suspicious type of things.
Interesting.
It's a small vial of spit. It's really not that interesting.
They're like, what is that? So we're left in a cliffhanger a little bit for next week again, huh?
Yeah, we'll talk more about where George Stag got his money so he could just go play adventure reporter / kidnapper / prison chaplain.
Sounds like a very interesting life. Well, Dan, I can't wait to see you back in studio so we can hear more about that because now I'm interested. I mean, who has a life like that? So definitely want to learn more about that character.
Looking forward to it.
When we return, we're talking about how you can really find that, how you can connect with that mission, and how we can move forward with our mission and our purpose, because that's what we're looking for, right? That's what we want to find, because I'm going to help you determine a few of those things and how to really see that reality. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shades.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Glad to be back, glad to be back. It's our last segment today. We'll be back next Saturday for sure. You can count on it. You can count on it. You can count on this. We have no idea what it's going to be like next Saturday, right? But, really quick, because I think it's time for us to analyze the concept of our mission. We've been talking about a mission, being empowered. There's all these things going on, and yes, it's the noisiest time to be on the planet, right? But how can we transmute some of that fear, anxiety, stress, reaction into something that is powerful? How do we focus on something that we can be empowered with? And how can we make sure that we're focusing on something that, one, we have the ability to take care of, two, we want to, and three, we have the skill set? The first thing that I want you to ask yourself with regards to finding your mission to stop the noise and to start transmuting this for a positive direction, a changing direction to help other people, is what matters most to you. What is something that matters most to you? Think about it. What is it that matters most to you? What is it that really connects to your heart? What is it that you think about at night? What is it that keeps you up at night? What is it that what is that important? What really matters to you? Not what matters to everybody else, not what matters to your family, not what matters to your kids, not what matters to your spouse or your significant other. No, just you. Just you. What is that? What is that matters? Okay. Start thinking about that. Write up a list. Don't keep this all in your head. Okay, so the second thing is, so something matters to you. What can you do about it? What can you do about it? What is it that you can do? What is it that you can do about the situation at hand? Think about it. What can you do? And, it takes you to be honest with yourself, because many of us are our harshest critics. We judge ourselves adversely. We don't see the value that we provide. We actually see the value that other people provide, but we don't see the value that we provide. And then the next question that I ask you is, how can you pull this all together? What can you do to pull this all together? What can you do? Question. How do you pull it all together? Are there some people that you can bring in, want to be involved with you? Are there some people that also share the same vision and mission statement as you do, that y'all can contribute and help one another? No man, no woman is an island. We can, use help. And this can also become part of their mission. And then you have to ask yourself, so I have this mission. Now, how does this help other people? Or how does this help the planet? Or how does this help animals? Or how does this help the elderly? Or how does this help with the drinking water? Whatever. How does this help? How am I helping? What is my help factor? What is happening? What am I doing? How am I helping? All interesting questions, right? All of this needs to be kind of written down, because there's only so much that you can carry in your own mind all the time with all this noise. And so we ask how it helps and who it helps and how it helps and why it helps and all that great stuff. And then also the next one would be, how does this push me forward to achieving my purpose in life? How does this push me forward? How does this motivate me even more to continue on my purpose-driven life? How does this do this? And so the next time that you begin to feel overwhelmed, the next time that you begin to react, the next time that you feel uncontrollable fear, I want you to regain consciousness and realize, I can feel this way, or I can find a way to contribute where the fear will no longer overtake me. Where I won't have the time to go off on people on Facebook or social media. I'll actually use that time that I was doing that to create something of value, something that's important. And I'm going to do it in a way that I contribute to the betterment of my society, the betterment of the people, whatever it is that you want to choose for that. All good questions, correct? And then, how do I do that? And how does that connect with me and why I'm here? And these are the questions I want you to ask. I know you can, and I know that you have answers for all of these, and I'm looking forward to hearing about some of y'all's missions. And in the meantime, check out the website, ashleyburgess.com. Go to ashleyberges.com if you'd like to work with me. You can schedule an appointment right there online, as well as check out the latest website, the 10-Day Challenge, the number 10daychallenge.com. You can check out the 2 master classes that I have up there, really great. Living with someone with BPD, as well as how to live your true life masterclass. There's a 3rd one coming out very shortly. But in the meantime, if you're looking for video content on everything, anything on toxic relationships to value to anything like that, go to YouTube and put in Ashley, Berges. We have a great show coming up for you next week. And in the meantime, thank you so much for tuning in. And it's up to you. Find that mission and help other people. I believe in you. Live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. You know it. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.